Tanmay Krishna Prabhu, Swati Mataji, Amala, and Aditi. Did I miss anyone? There were so many devotees who went that I think we covered everybody. So we're very fortunate that we have with us today His Holiness Romapada Swami Maharaj. Maharaj joined ISKCON at a very, very young age when he was in a pre-med school. And that's when he met Srila Prabhupada. He was so impressed by the devotees, the philosophy, the books, and when he was then admitted, when he got admission to medical school, he actually didn't go to medical school. He joined full-time as a devotee. And since then, he's been serving. Maharaj is originally from New York. And he's been serving in many, many capacities. GBC, preaching all over the world. I was just speaking with him recently. For about 2 months, he was in China. It's a very, very dangerous place to preach. And who goes there to preach it's not ordinary. So, Srila Prabhupada's blessings and mercy. And I personally have had many opportunities to take personal instructions from Maharaj, several of them, and I also always relate examples that today, even I'm in Krishna consciousness because some of the guidance that Maharaj gave to me in the early days. So very, very fortunate, and we're very grateful that Maharaj is with us here today. Let's welcome once again with loud Haribol. Haribol!
Somehow the wireless mic is not working.
It's already 6:30. So we'll just say Jai Radha Madhav, everybody. Because of time. Huh?
7:30.
Yeah. I'll be lucky if I finish by 7:30. So one of our rituals we just did by saying Jai Radha Madhav, everybody. We have our ISKCON. The garland is one of our ISKCON rituals, and Jai Radha Madhava is another ritual, and so now we're begin the evening class. Does anybody here need an introduction to who is Dhruva Maharaj? Everybody here knows, right? Anybody not know and needs an introduction? Okay, great. So, in one word, raise your hand. When you think of Dhruva Maharaj, what comes to your mind when you think of Dhruva Maharaj? One word.
Determination.
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 Determination. You had your hand?
Yeah, determination.
3 determinations. It looks like determination wins. Anything else? When you think of Dhruva Maharaj, yes?
Austerity.
Austerity. I couldn't hear you. Hate?
Faith.
Faith. Yes.
Pure
Faith.
Devotion.
Huh?
Devotion.
I say it.
Devotion.
Devotion.
Sincerity.
And maybe you could say in a few words, because there's some really important ones about Dhruva.
Gratitude.
Huh?
Grateful.
Grateful. Yes, very important. Very important in the transformation from mixed to pure devotion. So, the Dhruva Maharaj story happens very early in creation. Because of time, I'm not going to go through what I would want to go through, but the Vedic picture of time is time moves in cycles. So from the time of cosmic annihilation, then topics in the Srimad Bhagavatam include creation and the sub-creation, Sarga and Visarga. Those 2 topics are discussed in Canto 3. Because the storyline is Vidura meets Maitreya, there's this wonderful exchange between them, one appreciating the other and vice versa. You know, the exchange between a Brahmana perfected being and someone that's not a Brahmana, in this case it's Vidura, but very elevated personality. And they have mutual respect for one another. And then Vidura places questions. And that's early in Canto 3. He wants to hear about creation. And it's not like he didn't know, because he's an educated person, but he wanted to hear from the lips of a perfected soul, so he would get the deeper realization of that subject matter. And so he asks, and Vidura and Maitreya explains, and then after the sub-creation, then comes filling up the universe that Brahma creates. So Manvantara, another one of the topics, is the appearance of the Manus and what the Manus do. So the first of the Manus is Swayambhuva Manu. And then Swayambhuva Manu receives instructions from Brahma what to do. And it's fill up the universe and give laws to mankind and some other instructions. And it's, yes sir. So Shatarupa and Swayambhuva Manu have 2 sons and 3 daughters, and one of those daughters, Devahuti, becomes a major topic in the 3rd canto, towards the second half, to practically the conclusion of the Canto 3. Devahuti is married to Kardama Muni. Kardama Muni is one of the direct sons of Brahma, and there's this wonderful description of how that is arranged. And then 9 daughters, it's a long time, they do, anyway, long description. Kapila is born as their son. Kapila's instructions to Devahuti is many chapters, very important. Sankhya philosophy, achieving the perfection through devotion to the personality of Godhead. Lots of discussion about the process of devotional service included in that whole section. And so that's just one of the daughters. But then there were 2 sons. And the elder of the 2 sons, what was his name? Priyavata?
Yeah.
Priyavata? Priyavata says, well, Dad, I don't want to become the king. I want to go to the forest and perfect my devotion. But my younger brother, he's really good. And make him the king instead of me, please. So Swayambhuva gives that consent, and Uttanapada becomes the king, and we're going to hear shortly. So Canto 4, Chapter 8 begins describing a few things, and then Uttanapada and his 2 wives and Dhruva, and the whole story begins. So that's the context. And it's Purana, it's history, but in the course of the history, there's many lessons about life within the history, the perfected soul and those that are on the opposite side. And we're going to meet some of both just this evening. So these are the verses that we'll be discussing this evening, 1 through 24 of chapter 8. And I've given it this little subtitle, React or Respond. I don't know if any of you have some training in counseling or anything related to that, but that's this terminology is modern terminology. When something happens that's unpleasant, you can react, or that's a mode of passion, ignorance response, or you can respond thoughtfully, properly, taking shelter of higher consciousness. so you can respond in the appropriate manner. And both are being profiled in this little section. So it's called. So here's how the chapter begins. Again, it's Maitreya speaking to Vidura. So Maitreya says, the four great Kumara sages headed by Sanaka, these are all direct sons of Brahma, as well as Narada, Ribhu, Hamsa, Aruni, and Yati, all sons of Brahma, did not live at home but became Urdhva Reta, or Naishtika Brahmacharis, unadulterated celibates. So they didn't, there's no family line with them because they had no wife and no children. My dear Vidura, this is now text 5. We skipped a couple, you'll see shortly why. My dear Vidura, I have summarily explained the causes of devastation. Verses 2 through 4. One who hears this description 3 times, we're going to hear it once, attains piety, and that not the material kind, the other kind, and washes the sinful contamination from his soul. So the bondage of material existence comes from the contamination of the modes of nature. And when Brahma creates, he doesn't create only good stuff, he creates bad stuff. So you can go like this, well, wait a minute. Why does he create bad stuff? Or go further, why does God create bad stuff? And the answer is it has to do with the guna and karma of the living entities. Very quickly, because I want to stay within my time limits. During the cosmic annihilation, the living entities don't go out of existence. They're eternal. Karma is put in suspended animation, or is held in abeyance, or the time factor is withdrawn, and so there's no karma. Without time, there's no karma. If you were the personality, if you want to have a nice job and become the personality of Godhead, and you want to create a universe, you got to have time. And you invest the time energy, and then karma and the modes of nature become agitated and they start happening again. Then you need bodies to fulfill guna and karma, so then the bodies appear. But before the bodies appear, there's guna and karma, and before that it's dormant. Now it's time for creation. Zoom, there goes the time energy, along with the glance of Mahavishnu over Pradhan. And the time energy starts to act. You want to unplug it? Just withdraw the time energy. Ooh. Just like those things that people put in their front lawns at Christmas time, Santa Claus or Snoopy or whatever it is, snowman, and they pump him up at night and then they pull the plug and he's just a pile of stuff on the front lawn till it's nighttime again. So time energy makes it look like, hey, it's happening. But it's time energy making it happen. It's one of the energies that makes it happen. So when you have time energy and you have karma of living entities, it's good and bad and mixed. So Brahma creates the situation for the good and the bad and the mixed. So that's what these 4 verses are. Prabhupada writes in the commentary for this verse, text 5, devastation takes place because of irreligion and falsity. So here's where they are. One of the sons of Brahma is irreligion. And one of the daughters of Brahma is falsity. And they have this incestuous relationship. And they produced 2 children. Damba. It didn't even sound nice. Bluffing and cheating. And then so this is what these verses say. They put in a diagram. And then they have their offspring, greed and cunning and anger and envy and quarrel. We know Kali. Harsh speech. We know about harsh speech too. We're going to hear some harsh speech coming from one of the personalities in this section. Death, fear, excessive pain and hell. Gosh, those are all unpleasant things. But devastation takes place because of those things. There's the big devastation, and then there's little devastations. We're going to hear about some little devastations. So after text 5 comes a natural question. How does knowing all these things, because text 5 says, one who hears this description 3 times attains piety and washes the sinful contamination from his soul. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, by knowledge one can avoid these items. Now, 6th canto tells us, in short, knowledge is good, but knowledge alone is not enough. But knowledge helps. Knowledge is like fire, Bhagavad Gita. It can burn reactions. But what happens to the fire, then something, after some time, vegetation comes again because the roots are still there. So there's supposed to be a printed out document. Don't do it now. But when you have to leave it, whatever you have to leave, just somebody should pass out. There's a document, 4 pages, that we're going to get as a gift before you go home. And it's going to include this chart that you saw, the slide before, and Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purports, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary, and it's going to ask you, I'm asking you now, take a look at it. So it's not just, oh, that was nice information and you go home. But it's something, see if you can bring it inside. That's the purpose of this. After class, during your, prashad or whatever else you're going to do, consider those 4 pages and how are these above factors related to each other? How do they bring about devastation, and how do they bring about what we're going to see just now? The interaction between Uttanapada, Suniti, and Saruchi and Dhruva, the 4 personalities. They're different, and they embody different characteristics. It's interesting, and it's important. Besides the story is nice, it tells us something about life, that we live, and how to stand by higher principles instead of the other ones. So the lineage of Dhruva Maharaj is discussed in these verses, 6, 7, and 8, and here's a chart that says what it says. Down here, this is Dhruva. His mother's name is Suniti. His father is Uttanapada. And Uttanapada's father and mother are Swayambhuva Manu and Shatarupa, who are born directly from the body of Brahma. I mean, that's a very interesting thing too. When they appear, it's not with the assistance of Brahma's wife, and when they appear, they're in adult features. I mean, he's got a mustache already. And, so what are we supposed to do? And he gives them their service, and it's off they go. They're born from his body to assist him in his process of creation. He's empowered. Shrishti Shakti. He can do that, just voila. We can't just voila. But he has that power. And then they derive their power. We're going to hear shortly how that happened. There's some in-between details. Okay, so Dhruva, Uttanapada and Suniti, Saivavamanu and Shatarupa, Lord Brahma. So this is the early stages of creation. I find it interesting that of the three daughters, one of them is Devahuti. One of the sons of Devahuti is Kapila. That means Dhruva and Kapila, Lord Kapila, are cousins. How'd you like to have Lord Kapila as your cousin? We don't know, I don't know of any interaction between them, but perhaps there was. So this is way up there. The Satya Yuga, the means of achieving spiritual perfection in Satya Yuga is? The means of achieving spiritual perfection in Satya Yuga? Meditation. Dhyayate. So Dhruva does some meditation along with some other things, mantra chanting and other things. So that's the family lineage. There's an image that's showing Uttanapada, and one of his queens, the younger of the two, Suruchi, was his favorite queen, and Suniti, the elder, was not only not favored by him, but practically abandoned by him. It wasn't very nice. That was Dhruva's mother, Suniti. And we're going to hear some nice things about Suniti. She's a fantastic devotee. She's not just Dhruva's mother, she's a fantastic devotee. So there's Dhruva, and in his childhood, innocent Dhruva, he saw both mothers equally. But Suruchi had a problem. And the problem was she wanted her son to be the king. But he was the younger son, and so she was envious of the elder son. And so she did some not very nice things. So the theme is this react versus respond. So just genuinely, I'm going to pause a little bit here. Has it ever happened in your life that someone has mistreated you? I see some people nodding, especially on the ladies' side. Have you ever hurt someone else? And what was your response with either of those? So, I'm going to pause and let you think about it for a minute. This is to bring the message inside, so it's touching your heart. What was your response? Now the theme that I'm presenting for this section is, did you react? Or did you thoughtfully respond? And what makes the difference between reacting and responding? So we're going to get some profiles of the two. And the reacting profile model is Suruchi. I have a nickname for her. I call her Sunasty. You can call her what you like. Dhruva desired to sit on his father's lap. When the child, Dhruva Maharaj, was trying to get up on the lap of his father, Suruchi, his stepmother, became very envious of the child, and with great pride and spite. Remember those destructive forces from earlier verses. She began to speak so as to be heard by the king himself. And the little body language along with it too. So the situation was, the younger son, his name was? Uttam. That's a nice name. Uttam was on his father's lap. And seeing his younger brother on his father's lap, he wanted to climb up on his father's lap too. And Sunasti came along and said, "Get down." Loud enough, specifically, purposely, to see, so that Uttanapada could hear. So Prabhupada explains that this envy and pride that she was carrying, besides it's a destructive force, they are good companions. They go together like two sides of the same coin. Where one is envious, then there's pride. When one is pride, commonly there's envy. So when there's pride, this is the analysis that comes in the commentary. Then there's this cheating tendency, greed and cunning, anger and envy, comes then the behavior. So those are subtle forces that bring destructive behavior. In her case, it was harsh speech. And it can be something else or something else or something else. But that's what she was prone to. All of this is part of it, goes back to those verses 2 through 4, through destructive, the forces of destruction of the universe. When it becomes a crescendo, the whole universe gets destroyed. She spoke very harshly. Dhruva felt very hurt. Listen to the words, and what's a little boy going to understand from her words other than her body language was really clear, and the tone was probably also really clear, but all of what she's saying, what's a little boy going to understand anyways? "My dear child, you do not deserve to sit on the throne or on the lap of the king. Surely you are also the son of the king, but because you did not take your birth from my womb, you are not qualified to sit on your father's lap. My dear child, you are unaware that you were born not from my womb, but of another woman." Didn't even say her name. "Therefore, you should know that your attempt is doomed to failure. You are trying to fulfill the desire which is impossible to fulfill. If you at all desire to rise to the throne of the king, then you will have to undergo severe austerities. First of all, you must satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. And then, when you are favored by him because of such worship, you shall have to take your birth from my womb." Now, what a nasty thing to think, what to speak of say. Essentially, she's saying you have to die, and then in your next life take your birth from my womb if you want to sit on your father's lap. Get down. So we're going to take a look at her profile here. Pride. Krishna, this is early in Satya Yuga. So she knows the personality of Godhead, Brahma, Swayambhuva Manu. She's, this is very, very early. Uttanapada. And they're very seriously connected, certainly at least Swayambhuva Manu and Brahma. Uttanapada kind of missed a beat somewhere. Krishna is the giver of spiritual awakening and liberation from the cycle of birth and death. That's what Krishna can give. But Suruchi tells Dhruva, pray to Krishna so you can take birth from my womb. Because of pride. Pride makes one think that they're bigger than Krishna. That is, you have to take your birth from my womb, and to achieve that, you go to Krishna. Because I'm up here, Krishna's here, and you're down there. And even Krishna's put at a lower level. The giver of liberation has to award your birth from my womb. She's very, very proud. Now, purposefully, she spoke these words so that Uttanapada could hear. He hears, and he does nothing. The sage Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, as a snake, when struck by a stick, breathes very heavily, Dhruva Maharaj, having been struck by the strong words of his stepmother, began to breathe very heavily because of great anger. When he saw that his father was silent and did not protest, I mean, naturally, he's a little boy, he looks, Daddy, silent. He immediately left the palace and went to his mother. So now here's another profile. We had the Sunasti, now here's Uttanapada, another profile. Negligence and indifference, both. So what's behind that? Sometimes we may see somebody, sometimes we may even get involved in something like that ourselves. So what's the cause? What's behind it? Hridaya Dorbalya is one of those. That's this broken heart in the middle. Because of undue attachment to Suruchi. Later, when Narada goes to visit the king, that's what the king says. It's my undue attachment to Suruchi. And that was the cause of my weakness of heart. Now, Hridaya Dorbalya, you know it's from Bhagavad Gita, right? Chapter 1, Bhagavad Gita. Anarya Jushtam Ashvargyam. Krishna says to Arjuna, you're an Aryan, you know the higher purpose of life. But when you know the higher purpose of life and you don't do, Hridaya Dorbalya, this petty weakness of heart. I'll say it again. When you know what to do and you don't do what you know is to be done, there's a weakness of heart. According to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his Harinam Chintamani, this is one of the sources of anarthas in the heart. We all know that term in ISKCON, anartha, some unwanted things in the heart. One of the sources of that is this Hridaya Dorbalya, according to Bhaktivinoda. You know what to do and you don't do. You don't make the right choices, even when you know what the right choice is. And, side by side, that causes the duties of life to, and the responsibilities, in his case as a father and as a king, to give protection. Little boy. He looks to his father, crying. And his father doesn't give it. He could easily. He didn't have to hit her or anything like that. Just put his foot down. Look, you can't speak like this. Or whatever. He did nothing. Weakness of his proper duty and extending protection and affection. Now, we have a third profile here, and that's Suniti. That's his mother. And she feels feelings similar to Dhruva's feelings. And she's in the mother position, And she's as far as I have understood, she's a pure devotee. She's a very elevated soul. And so she does all the right things that a pure devotee would do. And some of it is a little curious too. So here's the nature of one who is responding. We're advised to respond instead of react, with compassion and with direction. So when Dhruva Maharaj reached his mother, his lips were trembling in anger and he was crying grievously. These are two emotions, anger and pain. Crying, emotional pain. What did Queen Suniti do? Immediately, she lifted her son onto her lap. While the palace residents, who had heard all the harsh words of Suruchi, related everything in detail. Thus, Suniti also became greatly aggrieved. No, she was not unfamiliar with negative emotion. Pure devotees are not unfamiliar with negative emotion. When your child is insulted like this, there may very well be some negative emotion. And a big part of it is her empathy for what her son is going through. This incident was unbearable to Suniti's patience. There's the third emotion. She began to burn in a forest fire, and her grief, another emotion, negative emotion, became just like a burnt leaf. And so lamented. And she remembered the words of, as she remembered the words of her co-wife, her bright lotus-like face filled with tears, another emotion, and thus she spoke. Now this is the response option. Suniti, in responding, she empathically understood and felt Dhruva's painful feelings. She acknowledged them, first just in a motherly, natural way, embracing her son and taking her son in her lap, etc., consoling him that way. She doesn't react. She doesn't act impulsively on her own feelings or feeling the feelings of her son, but she's looking for the path forward, the solution. So here's a little diagram. When you react, all you see is the problem and you get toasted. Your intelligence goes out for vacation and something else takes place. So that was what was happening with Dhruva. And but she's not like that. She's very qualified personality. And so she is looking for solutions. There's a little saying, Henry Ford said, don't find fault, find a remedy. This is something I learned as a teenager. You're a teenager? How old are you?
I'm 13.
Huh?
I'm 13.
13. Just got it, okay. So as a teenager I learned, any 2-bit teenager can find fault. Where's that teenager that can find a solution? I want to find that teenager. That was it. Anyway, it's the higher ground. And because reacting and finding fault doesn't achieve anything. You get nothing good is achieved. So she was also breathing very heavily. And she did not know the factual remedy for the painful situation. So she couldn't find a solution. There's things in our life, you're looking for a solution, you don't find a solution. Then what do? So in her case, she is a Vaishnavi, an exalted Vaishnavi. She takes shelter of higher principles. That's what she did. You go to the light. That's what you do. It's a lesson in how to respond to difficult situations. Take shelter of higher principles. Here is the verse in Sanskrit. My dear son, don't wish for anything inauspicious for others. Anyone who inflicts pains upon others suffers himself from that pain. That's good advice, isn't it? You're angry, so she knows her son. Don't go there, because it's only going to bring the same to you. This word amangala, mangala, yes, mangala arti, right? This amangala is inauspicious, and it's the meaning in this case is fault finding. Bhaktisiddhanta taught, don't find fault in others. When something happens that's untoward, like harsh, it happens. Sometimes this other option, sometimes we may, due to whatever situation, some difficult circumstance we're in, we may also speak harshly to others, like Maharaj Parikshit did with the sage. But we may say something in the moment and then later regret it. We should at least later regret it. But when it comes out, you should feel something like, gosh, why did I do that? Radharani would sometimes meditate on, why do I speak like this to Krishna? That's Vaishnav. And so she's instructing, she's training her son. Now, he's not able to take this one in, but it's her advice. This is Vishwanath, paraphrasing. Do not find fault in others, because those who have given suffering to others previously will receive the same in this life. Commentary. Do not find fault, amangalam, in your stepmother. You have experienced the results of sins you have committed in previous births, since the person who gives suffering to others in a previous life receives it back. Now, we don't remember that part when someone is speaking harshly to us. That's why this verse is there, to remind us. Accept the instruments of your own karma. This principle of acceptance is very important. We're going to hear more about it shortly. Do I have time to tell this story? No, I don't. I'll tell it anyway. Many of you have, in the past, when there was the Festival of Inspiration in New Vrindavan, may have gone, and the keynote speaker every year was Peter Burwash. And he prepared every day for a whole year and gave his inspirational talk. So one of the stories he told every year was this story, and I'll make it short. It's a nice story when you take it long. He gave a donation. He was at a time in his career, he was earning money when the devotees were busy going on Harinam, didn't complete their education like me. So, I didn't have money, but he had a job. So he gave $500 to the Hawaii temple. And shortly after he gave the money to the Hawaii temple, the man he gave the money to ran away with his $500. Ooh, that hurt. And so later when Prabhupada came, because he had this relationship with Prabhupada, he told Prabhupada the story, along with other things. And Prabhupada's reply was, the behavior isn't bad, behavior isn't good, but don't blame the instrument of your karma. This is Prabhupada, and it's the same as Suniti to Dhruva. Okay? It's an important lesson. Now, related to this incident and Suniti speaking, there's commentary on this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, where Maharaj Parikshit is placing a serpent around the neck of the sage. And the purport reads, "The devotees of the Lord are so forbearing that even though they are defamed, cheated, cursed, disturbed, neglected, or even killed, they are never inclined to avenge themselves." Now, that what Dhruva was, he wanted revenge. So he wasn't on the devotee platform, wasn't on the pure devotee platform. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, this is his mother. "My dear boy, whatever has been spoken by Suruchi, your stepmother, although very harsh to hear, is factual." That's, take shelter and worship Vishnu. She said Narayan, but worship. Now, she didn't say accept your karma. That's his mother teaching. But, so she's taking her to higher principles. She's taking him to higher principles. The way to respond rather than react when something unpleasant happens is to look up to higher principles and those that you can, to your capacity, take shelter of them. Because then there's light, and it takes you out of the darkness of the negative emotion space. Therefore, if you desire at all to sit on the same throne as your step brother, Uttama, then give up your envious attitude and immediately try to execute the instruction of your stepmother. Gosh. I mean, the words that she's speaking are really amazing. Overlook the harshness and take the gold from a filthy place. Give up envy. Envy, it's a nice graphic, huh? I didn't do it, somebody else gets the credit. Envy is like a hungry demon with lots of sharp teeth which can eat away any positive qualities. So here's a nice, I'm going to run out of time. Here's a nice lesson. One of the Bhakti Shastri teachers in Vrindavan is named Adi Purusha. This is his product, not the graphics, but this language. Acceptance. He says this is a key to understanding Bhagavad Gita. When we don't accept an undesired event, it becomes anger. When we accept it, it becomes tolerance. So Dhruva was angry. When we don't accept uncertainty, it becomes fear. When we accept it, it becomes adventure. When we don't accept others' bad behavior towards us, it becomes hatred. When we accept it, it becomes forgiveness. When we don't accept others' success, it becomes jealousy. When we accept it, it becomes inspiration. And his conclusion is, acceptance is the key to handling life well. So, in essence, she's advising him, accept the good part of what your nasty stepmother had to say, or amongst the nasty words of your stepmother is gold. Take the gold. And just accept she's so nasty. And she spoke nasty words because she's very nasty. But there's something golden inside, and don't be envious towards the nasty dimension. Take shelter of the positive. Suniti Vishwanath's comment. My weeping has been written on my forehead by the Creator since my birth. It is my it's the reciprocation of my past activity. Now this is early in the whole of creation, so some previous lifetime in a previous day of Brahma or something that brought this misfortune is written on my forehead at the time of birth. I accept it. Here I am, the wife of Uttanapada, 3 generations after Vishnu, and I'm not only I'm neglected. Like, your father doesn't even care if I exist. That's why I'm way over here, not, in the palace. That's not a pleasant feeling. She's just accepting it. But she's wishing for her son, you should be happy. This is like, she's a supermom. Then she starts speaking, because she's such a devotee, about the lotus feet of Krishna. She's a Vaishnavi. Take shelter of lotus feet, like little birds take shelter of mother bird, and they're feeling protected. So take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, and you'll feel protected. Without further delay, you must engage yourself in worshipping the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If you desire to be seated like your brother, then without envy of Suruchi, execute the true words uttered by her, worship the lotus feet of the Lord. Suniti continued, glorifying his feet. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is so great that simply by worshipping his lotus feet, your great grandfather, Lord Brahma, acquired the necessary qualifications to create this universe. Although he is unborn and the chief of all living creatures, he is situated in that exalted post because of the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whom even great yogis worship by controlling their mind and regulating the life air. Your grandfather, she doesn't speak about his father. Your grandfather, Swami Bhuvamanu, executed great sacrifices with distribution of charity, and thereby, with unflinching faith and devotion, he worshipped and satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By acting in that way, he achieved the greatest success in material happiness. And he didn't die yet, but afterwards achieved liberation, which is impossible to obtain by worshipping the demigods. She's a fan of Krishna's lotus feet. My dear boy, you also should take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Is very kind to his devotees. Persons seeking liberation from the cycle of birth and death always take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord in devotional service, becoming purified by executing your allotted occupation. Just situate the Supreme Personality of Godhead in your heart, and without deviation for a moment, engage always in his service. Now that's what she does, even in adversity. So this little image is the mother pointing to the child. This is the Vartma Pradarshika Guru function. Krishna's feet are that way. Take shelter of Krishna's feet. Don't stay in this negative emotion space. So you can be a mother or a friend or a well-wisher of others. Just profile Suniti. She's an acharya of motherhood and friendship and good association. She's fantastic. Vishwanath comments this way: the Lord is affectionate to his servant. He will have more affection for you, his servant, than the affection of millions of mothers like me. Whether it's mother, it can just be friend. So be a friend to others, and like this. Fix your mind on him, purified by bhakti dharma. Now, we have friends. and we're trying to be friends, your best friend is one who will remind you of Krishna. And you can be the best friend of someone by reminding them of Krishna. I mean, you do other things too, because we have this holistic thing in our lives. You know, mothers put their children on their laps and feed them and do all kinds of things. But this higher principle is essential. And you can't give it if you don't have it, so get it and give it. And not only mothers, but friends and community. This is a community that's starting. Very important principle, because if it's not there, what are you going to get? You know what you're going to get. Dissension. So diversity is fantastic. Unity is what keeps the diversity wholesome. And where does that unity come? It comes from this taking shelter of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead and being that kind of association for others as best you can to help others connect to Krishna, remember Krishna, and make friends with such people. Be such a person and make friends with such people. Then you have a nice community. My dear Dhruva, as far as I'm concerned, I do not find anyone who can mitigate your distress but the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose eyes are like lotus petals. Many demigods, such as Lord Brahma, seek the pleasure of the goddess of fortune. But the goddess of fortune herself, with a lotus in her hand, is always ready to render service to the Supreme Lord. We're almost done. So, that's what responding looks like. It feels different. It looks different. It is different. That's Suniti's contribution to this section. And then contrasting is the other one over there. Now, I'm speaking of her as Sunasti, but even Suniti isn't speaking of her as Sunasti. She recognizes that what she said is nasty, but she doesn't feel enmity towards her. She doesn't put up a wall between her and her step queen. She has all those negative feelings about what she said and what her son's going through and so on, but she's taken shelter of higher principles. So, the great sage Maitreya continued, the instruction of Dhruva, Maharaja's mother, Suniti, was actually meant for fulfilling his desired objective. Mothers, consider, what's the objective, in this case, the higher objective, but to fulfill even this like childlike, I want a kingdom better than my father's 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 father. What does he understand about those things? But the way to fulfill that, she's interested in helping him. So he thought it over, and with intelligence and fixed determination, he left his father's house. And that's the end of this section. So over the Thanksgiving weekend, we're going to do this. There's 13 parts. This is part 2, because part 1 was just an introduction to who is Dhruva and so forth. And the lessons involved in this whole Puranic section. How our great acharyas took shelter. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in particular, it mentioned. He heard this hundreds of times. We all know the story. But hearing it again and again enriches and enhances the experience and the realization and lets it go into the heart so that we can come to this beyond the mixed to the unmixed position along with Dhruva by hearing and by his mercy. And it's 7:28. So it was 7:25. So what is it time to go upstairs and do the next program, or do we have time for questions? Or
nobody's going for the upstairs.
Nobody's going.
No. That's their programs. We just
Okay.
don't want to disturb their program.
Okay. Okay. So it's party time. The whistleblower is, the referee is gone. So anybody want to discuss something? Merle?
So the materialist, as a psychologist or psychiatrist, might find fault with the idea of, well, you have a negative emotion, and we're saying to act on a higher principle, but the negative emotion will be there,
Yes.
build up, and then...
No, no. The negative emotion doesn't build up. The negative emotion is she has transcended, is still there, but it's not building up. She has risen above, and she's advising her son to rise above. That's what happens. I mean, there are studies that when you go to we'll just call it the place of higher consciousness through meditation or bhakti and et cetera, when that higher consciousness is there, the negative emotion, the lower energy, lower modes of nature are still there, but they're not acting because you're in this place of higher consciousness. And gradually they can be dissipated altogether. But go to the place of higher, it's not bottle it up, it's not denial, it's rise to a higher place of consciousness. And I could go further with it, but I'll go for a little further. I learned this from Braja Bihari, because when he was living in India, he was invited to go to teach stress management. So one of the sayings goes like this, A and B. Life throws rocks at you, and it hurts. They both start that way. And then there's the react. They don't use the word, but that's the react. And you get angry at the person who doesn't do anything with the rock through life at you, and it hurts. It doesn't take care of the rock, and it hurts. It's just you get angry. And it gets worse. The negative emotion gets worse. So the respond. Life throws rocks at you, it hurts. It hurts. She's hurting. You take the rock and you toss it in the air a few times. Now what are my options? And one of the suggestions is, what is there something that I can do that's within the range of something that I can do that gives me joy and energy and light? And do some of that. Because life threw rocks at you and it hurts. That's not going to change. But what's my options? Even in terms of your emotional state, what is going to take me to the light and give me energy and joy? Do some of that. It's a choice. It doesn't take away. It's just you don't become obsessive about the negative emotion, the rock, and the circumstance that's outside of your control, and the hurt that you're feeling because of the circumstance that's outside of your control. What are my options? Life has circumstances, nothing we can do about it. And there are emotions connected to that which there's nothing we can do about it. So it's not denying those emotions. What are my options? In her case, Suniti was looking for solutions. She didn't see it. She's tossing the rock up in the air. So let's take shelter of higher principles. That's where she goes. In her life, being neglected by her husband, and worse, just like, I don't care about you. And, okay, Sunday school's over, it's time to end. Okay, any other quick question or two? Way in the back. How loud are you?
I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
Stand and speak loud.
Yes. I have done this going through. It's very interesting for me to watch Suniti's reaction, respond basically. And what I didn't understand is that half of it she kept talking about is you have to go and surrender yourself to the Supreme Personality, but she never mentions the second half of what she said. That
The second part of what?
what
Oh, because Suruchi said, austerity, take shelter of the personality of Godhead, you get his mercy, you can die, and then take birth from my womb and then get what you want.
Right.
So the nectar part is take shelter of the personality of Godhead. So follow that.
So maybe she knew that the second part was not going to come true, or
Who?
go with that,
Suruchi or Suniti? Suniti knew. She had faith. I'll take you one more. Are you a mother?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you going to feel okay if you have a 5-year-old, 6-year-old? Go to the forest. No samosas. Wild animals, snakes, mosquitoes, and whatever is out there in the jungle. Are you going to be okay with that? Go off to the... No. It's against motherhood. I find that astonishing. But she has that kind of faith, because that was one of the... You remember, where did he get that faith? He got it from her. She had faith. Vishnu will protect you. You take shelter of Vishnu, and he'll protect you. That's so you don't do foolish things, but he'll protect you. And it said later, all the while that he was gone, she was praying to Vishnu, please protect him. By her prayers, in addition to Dhruva's devotion, mixed devotion at that, but he was protected by the prayers of his elevated, exalted, pure devotee mother. She had that faith. I find it amazing. Think about it.
she was not worried about the second part. Clearly, she had faith.
Oh,
No mother would want her child to be born.
you were going to say that. Oh, yeah. Well, she is an exceptional personality. We should not imitate her. Don't send your kid to the jungle. But the principle, Vishnu will protect you, is something, if it's in your heart, you can pass it on to your children and your friends and, the world around you. Because there's always stuff that happens that's unpleasant due to guna and karma. That's why it happens. Okay, we're going to end. Is that okay? Srila Prabhupada ki? How'd you get